The prairie was cruel in its silence. Mary Dawson sat outside her crumbling cabin, her thin shawl doing little against the cold wind. The land stretched endlessly around her, dry, harsh, and unforgiving. Her 3 children sat close by, their faces pale, eyes hollow from hunger. It had been days since they'd eaten anything worth calling a meal. Her youngest, Lily, just 5, leaned against her shoulder. "Mama, my tummy hurts." Mary pulled her close, kissing her hair though her own body ached with weakness. "I know, sweet girl. I know." Her oldest, Caleb, barely 12, tried to put on a brave face, but even he could not hide the way his hands trembled. Sarah, 9, was quieter, staring at the ground with glassy eyes. Mary's husband had been gone nearly 2 years, killed when a wagon overturned during a hauling job. What little savings they had vanished on debts and desperate survival. Now all that was left was hunger, cold nights, and despair. That morning, Mary did something she swore she never would. She whispered a prayer that burned her throat as it left her lips. "Lord, if there's mercy left for us, send someone. Not for me, but for my children. Forget me. Just save them." Miles away, Samuel Hayes rode the boundary of his ranch. He was a tall man in his late 30s, broad-shouldered, his face weathered by years under the sun. Locals called him the Lonely Rancher, for he lived apart from town, speaking little, keeping to himself since the day fever carried off his wife and unborn child. He had buried love with them, or so he thought. That afternoon, as he rode near the creek bed, he heard something faint on the wind. At first he thought it was the cry of an animal. Then it came again, a human voice, weak, trembling. He spurred his horse toward it. What he found stopped his breath. A woman, gaunt and pale, half kneeling in the dust, clutching a small child who looked too weak to stand. Beside them, 2 more children sat silently, as if all the tears had long been spent. Samuel dismounted quickly. "Ma'am." His voice was deep, steady, though his heart pounded. "What's happened?" Mary looked up at him, eyes red-rimmed, her lips cracked. "My children." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please. Forget me. Just save them." The plea pierced him deeper than any bullet could. Without hesitation, he knelt beside the children, checking their breathing, their frail little arms. Then he looked back at her, his jaw tight. "They'll not be left to suffer another hour. Come with me." Mary shook her head weakly. "No, I can't ask." "You didn't ask," Samuel interrupted firmly, lifting Lily into his arms with surprising gentleness. "You begged for your children's lives, and I'll not turn away." Something in his tone left no room for refusal. Mary could only follow, stumbling as he guided them toward his horse. Within minutes, he had them mounted, her children clinging to him as he rode hard for his ranch. The Hayes ranch house was warm, solid, smelling of wood smoke and bread. To Mary, it felt like stepping into another world. Samuel set food before the children, fresh bread, milk, and thick stew. At first, they stared at it as though afraid it might vanish. Then Caleb took a bite, and soon all 3 were eating with quiet desperation. Mary's tears spilled unchecked. Samuel placed a bowl before her too. "Eat." She shook her head. "They come first." "You'll eat," he said firmly. "They need their mother strong." For the first time in weeks, Mary tasted real food. Each bite was both agony and relief, her body crying out and thanking her at once. When the children finally slept, warm and fed, Mary whispered to Samuel, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know us." Samuel stared into the fire for a long moment. "Because no one should beg for their children's lives. And because—" his jaw worked. "I know what it is to lose everything. I won't watch it happen to you." Mary lowered her gaze, overwhelmed by the quiet strength in his words. That night, as she lay awake listening to her children's steady breathing, she whispered again, "Thank you, Lord." But this time, she wasn't just thanking heaven. She was thanking the man who had come when she thought all hope was gone. Chapter 2. The days that followed stitched themselves into something Mary hadn't felt in months: safety. Samuel divided his stores without complaint. Each morning he brought milk for Lily, bread for Sarah, and an extra portion for Caleb, who was fast growing into a young man. He worked the ranch by day, yet always returned with small kindnesses, a jar of honey, an extra blanket, wood chopped and stacked high. Mary, determined not to feel like a burden, began to help where she could. She mended torn shirts, kept the hearth swept, and even cooked when her strength returned. Samuel never said much, but his eyes softened when he saw the children laughing again, color returning to their cheeks. One evening, Mary stood outside hanging laundry, the wind tugging at her hair. Samuel watched from the corral, his hands resting on the fence rail. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to notice the quiet grace of a woman moving with purpose, the way her smile reached her children, the way her strength had survived despair. She caught him looking. Their eyes met, and for a moment, silence spoke louder than words. But with hope came fear. One night, after the children slept, Mary sat by the fire, her face troubled. "I shouldn't stay here," she said suddenly. Samuel turned, frowning. "Why not?" Her hands tightened in her lap. "People will talk. A widow living under a man's roof, with no ring, no name to shield her. They'll call me shameless. They'll say my children are tainted by it." Samuel's jaw clenched. "Let them talk." She shook her head fiercely. "You don't understand. They already turned their backs on us. If the gossip spreads, it will fall on my children. I can't let them suffer more." He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Mary, you asked me to save your children. I did. But don't you see? Saving them doesn't end with food. It means giving them a future." Her eyes filled with tears. "And what kind of future can I give them? Alone, with nothing." Samuel's hand tightened into a fist, then slowly relaxed. He reached out, tilting her chin until her eyes met his. "Not alone. Not anymore." Mary's breath caught. "Samuel." His voice roughened, carrying years of buried longing. "I thought my heart was buried with my wife. But you and those little ones, you've woken something in me I thought was dead. You asked me to save your children, Mary. And I will. But I'll save you too, if you'll let me." Her tears spilled, but this time they weren't of despair. She pressed a trembling hand to his. "You already have." The weeks turned to months. Mary's children thrived, running across the ranch yard with laughter in their voices. Samuel worked harder than ever, but the loneliness was gone, replaced by the warmth of family. One crisp morning, as the sun broke over the prairie, Samuel stood with Mary on the porch. The children played nearby, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Samuel turned to her, his voice steady. "Mary Dawson, I may not have planned for this, but I know it with all I am. Marry me. Let this house be your home. Let my name protect you, and let my heart be yours." Mary's breath caught. She looked at her children, alive, happy, safe. She had begged for her children to be saved. But in the end, the lonely rancher had saved her heart too.